and welcome to Meldon Law and Friends, a weekly podcast brought to you by Meldon Law, a law firm that specializes in personal injury cases, also in criminal defense matters. We have our primary office in Gainesville, where we've been since 1971. We also have an office in South Florida covering the entire Tri-County area, from Miami-Dade County through Broward all the way up through Palm Beach County, and also in Marion County in Ocala, where we've been since 1978. So please know how much we appreciate you joining us. This is episode 26 of Meldon Law and Friends. It's April 20th, 2021. That's a special day, isn't it, Jeffrey?
Yeah, today is 420 for our friends that either smoke pot or used to smoke pot.
That's right. It is 420 Day, a national day, and with that in mind, we've got two guests on today's show, both of whom are professionals in the cannabis industry. We want you to not only watch today, but we want you to text us your questions by going on the Meldon Law Facebook page and typing your questions in the comments section. We assure you that we've got two guests who have a lot to say and know lots about what's going on in the cannabis industry nationally and internationally. So let's get right to it. Victoria Walker with Columbia Care. Those of you in Gainesville certainly may have some familiarity with Columbia Care. They've had a presence here for a couple of years. And Victoria, you are the Vice President of Marketing for the East Coast of the United States. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So anyhow, Victoria, what do you do as the Vice President for Marketing for the East Coast for Columbia Care? And can you start by giving us a little background on what Columbia Care is?
Sure. So Columbia Care is a cannabis organization. We operate in 18 states throughout the United States in both adult use and medical states. So we have a pretty large footprint with 87 dispensaries across the United States. I have about half of those that I help on the East Coast. And so my job is to really help us develop in our markets, grow locations, put products out in the stores that customers are looking for, and then also educate people in each one of our markets about the programs that are available to them, whether it's medical cannabis or adult use cannabis, and how to get safe access to that.
How did Columbia Care get started?
Back in 2012, I think, when this whole industry was really starting to take off in the United States, most states were opening up CBD only programs and really starting to explore medical cannabis. And they went through the states that were starting to open up their regulations and went through the application processes to get applications to operate in those states, which is really how every state gets started. They approve medical cannabis, and then they start building out their rules and regulations, and their application process is to have companies come in and operate however they set that up, whether it's operating dispensaries, operating cultivation centers, or in the case like Florida, you actually operate the whole supply chain. So it's a vertical market. So every market's a little bit different, but you just kind of work within those guidelines and submit applications. And here we are several years later.
You talk about a vertical market. What's a horizontal market?
So that's really what you're used to in normal consumerism. So think about the grocery store, right? A Publix grocery store can purchase products from any manufacturer. And in a horizontal market, it's the same way. So you could operate just a dispensary and wholesale purchase your products from multiple growers, or you could just operate cultivation and sell your products to dispensaries. So it's more of a free market, for a lack of better description.
So in a vertical market, does that mean that the grower also owns the dispensary?
They do, yes. They own the whole supply chain. So in Florida, we have to cultivate, produce the products, and also get those products to our retail stores, and then operate the retail stores at the same time.
Now, in the beginning, there were only six or seven growers that were licensed in Florida. Mm-hmm. Has that expanded at all?
Oh, yes. Definitely. We're up to probably like the mid 20s of licenses that have been approved in the state. It's a long process to get up and running because of that vertical system. You have to start growing, right? And it's a plant. And the Department of Health does a really good job of really regulating the safety of all of the operations. And so there's a lot of approval processes to go through to make sure that you're operating in a very safe way and everything that you're putting out into the market is really high quality. So we're up to about mid 20s of operators in the state. I think Florida has over 500 dispensaries at this point, which is pretty amazing.
It truly is. So, as you know, we are a firm that does personal injury cases. We deal with people who sometimes have catastrophic pain, whether it be from a major truck accident, car crash, whatever. We are starting to see, a growing acceptance, not just from the courts, but also from insurance companies in recognizing cannabis treatment. What have you seen in that regard? And maybe talk to our viewers and listeners about the medicinal aspects of what you do.
I mean, it's really incredible. And I have to say, before I got into this industry, I didn't really know a whole lot about how cannabis could help in all those different scenarios and injuries, anxiety, pain. I really didn't know a lot about it. And now I've met thousands of patients. A lot of patients have suffered from some sort of physical traumatic injury to their body, whether it be a car accident or, a work accident. Veterans who have been through combat, ex-athletes who have really had a lot of pain going through their careers. And it's pretty incredible to see how these products can not only help get you through the pain, but also start to repair parts of your body and parts of those ailments that are hurting you and actually improve your pain and help you get through it without a lot of side effects. And we meet a ton of patients who want to start weaning off of painkillers and using so much because you have a dependency when it comes to painkillers. Sure. And you have to continue to increase that to manage the pain versus really treating the pain at its core. So I would say you're probably talking 50% of the patients in the market that are using cannabis are experiencing some sort of pain, and that's what brought them to the program.
Victoria, why is it that the health insurance industry will pay for dangerous opioids but don't want to pay for medical marijuana treatment?
I'm not so sure that it's that they don't want to. I think right now they can't, right? It's illegal on a federal level, cannabis. Therefore, they can't cover it from insurance because they're regulated by federal law. It isn't declassified. It's still a very dangerous narcotic in the way that we classify things federally. And so they just can't. I'm not so sure that it isn't that they don't want to. I think it would probably save a lot of money from their prescription costs. But right now it's simply not an option for them to cover.
Yeah, as I understand it, marijuana is still considered a Schedule I drug next to heroin and other very dangerous substances, whereas opioids like Oxycontin are, although they're very dangerous, they're approved by the FDA for medical use.
One thing we're going to talk, I want to go ahead and preview our next guest. Actually, we've got 2 sessions with Victoria this afternoon. We're going to be talking this afternoon with Keith Stroup, who is the founder of NORML, the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. Jeffrey, my understanding is there was a major development yesterday from the U.S. House of Representatives. They passed the Safe Banking Act, which is going to deal with what exactly we're talking about right now, correct?
Yes, and we'll get into that with Keith, who's the legal advisor now on the NORML team, and I think Keith should know more about it. But the bottom line is pot dispensaries are cash businesses now because they can't put their money in the bank. Is that your understanding?
Well, we do have banking. All cannabis companies do have to have and have legitimate banking. It's more on a local level than on a federal level, but it definitely causes a lot of different challenges, not only for the companies, but for the employees. Cannabis companies are a massive employer in the states where they operate. And as an employee, and I've been in this space for several years, it provides a lot of challenges when you talk about just having a bank account, buying a home. It can be a real challenge right now, which is unfortunate.
What are some of the things you would suggest to improve the regulatory structure?
Well, I mean, I think the Safe Banking Act is definitely going to help, but it really comes down to the federal deregulation of it. And when it's recognized as something safe that can be consumed, you'll see not just banking, but other vendors we use. So there will be, just business to business vendors that we would want to do business with, but aren't able to work with us because the money isn't able to be accepted by their business. And so I think you'll see a lot of more opportunities in the space just from other providers in the technology, from employment too. I think the other thing you'll see is patients feeling more safe and accepted coming into a program, not worried about potentially losing their job because they're on medical marijuana.
We've got to cut to a break in just a moment. This is an extraordinarily informative session. We want to remind everybody that if you have a question, you can post your question by leaving it in the comments section on the Facebook Live feed, which you can watch, if you're not doing so already, at the Meldon Law Facebook page. So by all means, if you have any questions from Victoria, she is a professional who has worked, my understanding is she worked for TrueLeave at one point. Now she is a vice president with Columbia Care. So by all means, send us your questions. We also are going to be talking in the next segment about our ticket giveaways. We have many of those coming up for softball and baseball next week. No baseball games here this week, but we've got some next week we'll be talking about. For those asking why we're wearing headphones today, it's because we have Zoom guests today. They're not in person in the studio, and we really appreciate, Victoria, you accommodating your schedule. And we also have Keith Stroup coming up later this afternoon about 1:30. Thank you for watching. We'll be right back on Meldon Law and Friends.
When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them. The Gator Nation will be the first to tell you that in all kinds of weather, we all stick together, which is why Meldon Law is honored to be the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. We hope you never find yourself the victim of a serious accident, but if you do, our team is here for you. Gators won't back down from a fight, and neither do we.
Hello and welcome back to Meldon Law and Friends, a podcast brought to you by Meldon Law, a statewide law firm in the state of Florida with its primary office in Gainesville, also with offices in South Florida covering the entire South Florida area, and in Marion County where we've been for 43 years. We've got a brand new office we're opening and we're really excited about that. Jeffrey, we don't have baseball tickets to give away this week, and we do have softball games coming up against South Carolina this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, the baseball team is really picking up, as well as softball. They beat Alabama, which is ranked number 3 or 4 in the country this weekend. So that's a big deal for Gator softball, and we're going to be giving away some tickets for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday's baseball game or softball game.
And you know the way to do it. You go to the Meldon Law website, www.meldonlaw.com. Go to the homepage. Right at the very top, you'll see banners for baseball giveaways, softball giveaways. It's the same deal as we've been doing all spring. We're giving away 6 tickets total, a group of 4 and a group of 2, to the upcoming softball games, as well as to baseball games next week. Listen to this, Jeffrey. Next week, we're playing Vanderbilt, the #1 team in the country. How
Yeah.
about that?
Well, that's a big deal. And May 1st, there's game Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My understanding is there's a rumor that it's going to be Meldon Law Day on Saturday, May 1st at the Vandy game.
So somebody's going to have to, is it the first pitch, or do you hand the ball to the pitcher? What's the deal with that?
Well, I don't know if during COVID they're doing first pitches, but if not this year, next year.
Anyhow, it'll still be Meldon Law Day. We urge you. I'm sure those games are going to be sold out because it's the #1 team in America. So what does that mean? You've got to go to the Meldon Law website if you want tickets. So by all means, check that out. Okay, let's get right back to our wonderful guest, an extremely informative cannabis industry professional, Victoria Walker. And we have a question. The question on YouTube Live is, other than smoking and vaping, what are some other popular delivery methods for medical marijuana?
Well, one of the most popular that was just introduced to the state not too long ago are edibles. Also tinctures, oils, capsules, a lot of different options. There's also an interesting one that a lot of people like. It's a dissolvable powder, so it doesn't have a lot of taste to it. You can put it in hot tea, coffee, food, a lot of very, very interesting and effective ways if you don't like to necessarily smoke or vape. And a lot of our patients do choose those alternative routes.
I wanted to ask you to give us a profile of some of your customers. What kind of people do you see in a Columbia Care shop?
You see the spectrum of all kinds of people, from veterans, lots and lots of veterans coming in. Really, our average age is over the age of 50. So you see a lot of older people just looking for relief, looking for something different than the normal medications that they've been on. But they look just like you guys. They look like me. They look like everybody. And I think what's really fascinating is the longer the program has been around, the more diverse of a group of the patients become, the greater access. It's available to pediatric patients with parental care. So you really will see the gamut of people just like us.
Well, that's very interesting. I was skiing in Colorado before COVID started, and I went into one of those medical marijuana shops, and it was really nice. I mean, they they took my driver's license, scanned it, make sure, I guess, that I was over the age, and then they connected me with a concierge who took me around the shop and explained everything. And I was looking around, and everybody was over the age of 50 years old. And I was very surprised. I don't know if I expected to have a bunch of stoned out hippies in there or what, but I couldn't find one stoned out hippie in the whole shop.
No, I think that it's a false that cannabis customers, patients, or adult use all fit into this one profile. I mean, it's very much like going to the grocery store, right? Everybody could potentially benefit from it. And I think it's just, it's getting to a point where you're comfortable with that. And I think in Florida, when you get to a point where you're just kind of sick of alternatives, you turn to cannabis. And then when you get to a dispensary and you find out everyone is just like you, it's it's okay that all those kind of false pretenses go away. And I think it's one of the most fascinating things. And Florida is very similar. You see everybody.
Do you keep up with the sales trends for Columbia Care?
I do, yes.
Do you know if the sales go up on 420?
Yes, they will probably double today for sure. But we're also having a lot of fun with it, having fun promotions for our customers. And I think it's something new to a lot of people that have just really kind of discovered cannabis for the first time. They're learning about 420, and it's more like an event, like a party. So they come in and they really take advantage of the promotions and then also the fun.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're having higher sales.
I wanted to ask you something. When Columbia Care first came to Gainesville, I recall it was about 2.5 years ago. I think it was in early 2019. I know that one challenge they had, and I'm sure the other companies had the same challenge, was they didn't have flour. They strictly had the oils, you know, these other compounds, and that changed. There was a change where you were allowed now, my understanding is, to have flour. Can you talk to our viewers and listeners a little bit about that and how that has impacted your company?
Sure. So we were not allowed to have smokable flour in the beginning of this program, and we could sell flour to be vaporized, which is kind of an interesting concept and not normal, not something that customers really enjoyed, quite honestly. And then DeSantis legalized cannabis for smoking when he came into office, and they quickly put rules together for us to be able to sell it in a very traditional sense that you would see in a Colorado or in a California. And it did take the company some time to ramp up production in that, because, you know, we went from it not being allowed to it being allowed. And so the market just kind of exploded in growth with customers coming into the program that wanted access to it. So now I think we've all got those growing pains under our feet, and the supply is enough for the patients in the state of Florida, and continuing to grow, which is great, as are the patients. But it was an interesting journey, you know, not to be able to smoke medical cannabis, but be able to use it in other forms that, quite frankly, were more potent, like a concentrate. But, you know, we're finally there, and I think we've got a selection that would rival most states, which is cool.
Victoria, what do you see as far as the future of cannabis in the state of Florida?
I think Florida, I mean, it's the kind of crystal ball question that everybody gets asked. And you see it throughout the United States. So many states are going adult use. Florida will continue to just have a really robust medical program, lots of patients coming into it. And time will tell, right? It's got to make it on a ballot. It's got to be voted by all of us that we want that in our state. We want adult use. And I think with having such a successful medical program, it's just kind of the next step. When it happens, we don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. I wish I knew. It would make my job easier, actually.
Jeffrey, you and I were talking before we went on the air. It's really amazing, the statistics and the polling. It's a bipartisan thing. It's not so much a this versus that. It seems to be that there is across the board support now for the legalization of cannabis.
Yes, it's about 70% of adults now, and it's actually expanding because people see that it's being properly regulated by companies like Columbia Care. And I know Columbia Care is a leader in the industry. How do your dispensaries operate? What happens if somebody I assume they have to have right now a medical marijuana card to walk in, correct?
You do. If you don't have a card, you're welcome to come into one of our dispensaries, and we can help get you a card. We can recommend physicians. We can kind of walk you through the process. But in order to purchase products, you do have to have a medical card. We get you checked in. And very similar to your experience in Colorado, we kind of walk you through the process, talk about all of the products, walk you through your different options, and then follow up to make sure that those are the right products for you. So most customers that come in the first time, very confused, don't really know where to start. And so we're really focused on trying to help narrow down, potentially the 100 options they have to something that they can go home and feel comfortable starting with.
Now, in the states that you have recreational marijuana, what percentage of the gross revenues is medical marijuana sales versus versus recreational marijuana sales?
You mean what's the mix?
Yeah, the mix. In other words, is it more medical marijuana, 50-50, 60-40? Do you have any sense of that?
So a good example of that would be some of the newer states coming online where it's adult use, but there's also still a medical program, which is a common way that most states go adult use. Obviously, adult use produces more of the revenue just because the access is a little bit easier. But you do see that customers will stay in a medical program because there isn't a tax on that product. So it's an interesting shift when your state does go adult use.
Yeah, I noticed in Colorado there was a discount for people that bought medical marijuana versus recreational marijuana.
Yep.
Is that a model that's pretty common?
It is, because obviously states choose to go adult use because there's a tax impact on that, right? A revenue impact for the state or the city or the local municipalities that are operating. And so when you don't have to pay that tax, you are able to, in a medical program, receive a cheaper cost for those products.
Victoria, I have a question for you. You addressed this
Sure.
a little bit, but I want to go back to explain to our viewers and listeners who've never been to a facility like yours what to expect when they walk in the door. And my preface for this is, I'm sure there are some people who think, oh my goodness, I'll walk in there, I'm going to see bongs on the shelf or something like that. It's nothing like that. Maybe explain to our viewers what they will see when they walk in your door.
It's really not. Our dispensaries are so beautiful. I compare it to walking into like a Whole Foods where everybody's like really friendly, or a Trader Joe's where you get, welcomed, and you can have people hold your hand through the process if you need that, or you can explore the products kind of on your own. But it's very welcoming, very clean. Obviously, today we're having a little bit more fun with it, but I think that for the most part, it's a very comfortable and welcoming environment, and you're not alone in not knowing where to start. And we're very familiar with that, as we see thousands of new patients all the time. So you can just be honest and say, I have no idea where to start. I just want to solve XYZ. And we'll just start there.
Well, I wanted to thank you very much for Columbia Care's sponsorship of the Tom Petty Birthday Bash in Gainesville, Florida in the past. And your company has been just so wonderful. Meldon Law has been a sponsor as well. And I just wanted to thank you for everything that Columbia Care does for the Tom Petty Birthday Bash, for the city of Gainesville, and making sure that everybody has quality health care when they need it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for always supporting us and having us on here so we can share information. That's all we want to do.
Well,
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have you back at some point in the future, because this is such a growing, expanding, organic industry, and we're so happy to have Columbia Care as a corporate community partner in Gainesville, and all that you do and add. So on behalf of Jeffrey and the firm, thank you so much. We're about to cut to a break. We've got a great second guest. Please do not go away. Keith Stroup, founder of NORML, Jeffrey's longtime friend. I even heard him give a speech at UF way back in the 1970s. So I'm really excited about seeing Keith Stroup. You are watching Meldon Law and Friends. We are live today, 420 Day, April 20th, 2021. Thank you, Victoria, again for being a guest.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat them, join them.
I was in a truck accident. Because of the accident, I've resulted in 3 back surgeries. We saw advertisements on TV, and guess who popped up more often than not? It was Jeffrey. The communication that he provided was so appreciative. He shows his compassion as a human. He assisted us in achieving one of our dreams, the acquisition of a home, and we're here today with smiles on our face with the assistance from Jeffrey.
And I was in an accident. Someone ran a red light and hit me, and I was hurt. You don't know where to turn. Luckily, I called Jeffrey. These big insurance companies, they don't want you to win. They truly don't. But Jeffrey and his firm and the people that work here, they just really fight for you. You call the law offices of Jeffrey Meldon, because you're gonna need help, and they will help you.
The Meldon Law Firm from the beginning has been built on giving back to the community. I enjoy coming to work as much today as I did in 1971 when I opened my practice. I don't look at this as a job, I look at it as serving other people. While we're alive, what better feeling can you achieve than knowing that you've helped other people and thereby you enrich your own life.
Being a client of Meldon Law was special because I felt like I was really being listened to and I felt welcome by the entire staff. If I were in a situation where I needed legal advice and help, I would absolutely reach out to Jeffrey because his reputation alone speaks for itself. But on a personal level, I know that he would take care of me and help me solve those problems, and I would feel safe with him.
The Gator Nation will be the first to tell you that in all kinds of weather, we all stick together, which is why Meldon Law is honored to be the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. We hope you never find yourself the victim of a serious accident, but if you do, our team is here for you. Gators won't back down from a fight, and neither do we.
Hello and welcome back to Meldon Law and Friends, our special April 20th, 21 edition, otherwise known as 420 Day. My name is Chris Qualman. I'm here with Jeffrey Meldon, the founder, president, managing attorney for Meldon Law. And as we told you, in recognition of 420 Day, we have two guests. Well, you just heard from Victoria Walker. I am so excited, though, about our next guest. Keith Stroup, the founder of the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. I heard you speak, Keith, at the University of Florida Plaza of the Americas, outdoors. I think it was 1978. And you had a lot to say then, and gosh, I'm sure you got a lot to say now. So welcome to the program.
Thank you. We must have been younger men then, am I right?
I was 20 at the time, so.
Yeah, so Keith, I wanted to first of all say happy 420.
Thank you. It's our holiday. We should enjoy it, celebrate it. It used to be kind of an underground holiday. Today it's come above ground. It's been mainstream. You know, when you start having major states like Illinois and New York and New Jersey legalize marijuana, you know, you've sort of been brought in the mainstream.
Can you tell us what your understanding of the history of 420 is and how that name came about?
Well, I think most people's, what they know about it, we learned from High Times magazine, because High Times wrote about it on a number of occasions.
Okay.
Whether that's accurate, I have no way to know. But according to them, it was a group of high school students in California, I forget the city, who, when school got out at, say, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they would meet 20 minutes later to smoke a joint at some nearby location. And so the code when they would pass in the hallway would be 420, and that would mean I'll see you out there and smoke a joint in a few minutes. I have no idea if that's accurate.
Well, I like the story, though.
I think, yeah, well, I think that from the standpoint of history, who was that, Tom Forcade that started High Times?
Yeah,
and I know
Tom
he was a
Forcade.
very dear friend of yours and a supporter of NORML in the early days.
He was indeed. By profession, Tom was a radical political organizer. He was a smuggler. He literally flew his own plane and brought plane loads of marijuana into the country during a time when that could get you 20 or 30, 40 years in prison if you got caught. He founded something called the Underground Press Service during the early years, and that was, he recognized that there was no way for the hundreds of independent alternative newspapers to cooperate with each other. So he formed what was the equivalent of AP or UPI, but it was for the radical lefty independent newspapers around the country. So he was a very bright guy that saw ahead of his time, and he also founded High Times in 1974. I actually met him in 1972 at the Democratic National Convention in Miami. But it turns out, of course, they were big supporters of ours all during the time that Tom was alive.
You know, I was reading your book last night. It's NORML to Smoke Pot. And I've been, for our listeners, Keith and I have been friends since 1974. So what is that, 47 years. And I was a young attorney in Gainesville. I had opened up my practice at the end of 1971. And all of a sudden, because I was a long-haired hippie, I started getting all these pot dealers and people were getting arrested for pot as clients. And I started hearing about this group called NORML up in Washington, and I decided that I needed to take a trip up for the national conference that was being held. I think, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time I went, I think it was at the Hyatt Hotel, maybe.
Probably. We held, I think it was 94 and 95.
Or 74.
70, I'm sorry, 74, 75, 76. We were at the Hyatt, I think, 3 years in a row. The first conference, by the way, we were really hippy-dippy at the time. It was like 71 or maybe early 72. We called it the First People's Pot Conference. How's that for a era? We were using rhetoric that was popular at the time. And in fact, the one thing that's most memorable about that first conference is one of our activists from Texas, he was actually a DJ on a radio station down there, was busted because he had some bulk marijuana that was wet, and so he dried it on the hood of his car right out in the open. And of course, the police were sitting across the street. They knew we were holding a marijuana conference at this church, so we ended up having to go bail him out, etc. But again, by the time you're talking about, we were going to fancy hotels downtown, and we were attracting 300-400 people to the conference. If you remember, Hunter Thompson came to most of those early conferences as well.
Yeah,
and of course, that was a big, he was a
you
big
know,
draw.
I remember the office that was near DuPont Circle.
Yeah, 23rd and M.
23rd and M. So
I lived up on the top floor.
Yeah, so I walk in and said hello to you, and the next thing I know, you and myself are sitting there talking with Hunter Thompson and Hugh Hefner's daughter, Christy Hefner.
Yes, yes.
And just listening to Hunter Thompson live, you know, it was just an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, I always was a big fan of Hunter's. I met him also in '72 at the Democratic National Convention, and we became fast friends. We actually met because he was smoking a joint under the bleachers, and I smelled it and went down to introduce myself. But we became fast friends, and we're friends right up until the time of his death. He served on our advisory board for something like 35, 40 years. Fascinating man.
I want to remind our viewers and listeners that if you have a question for Keith Stroup, you can text the question by typing it into the comments section on Facebook Live. We urge you, if you've got a question, now's the time to do it. We also have one other request of you. We want you to share this video. It'll be preserved on the Meldon Law Facebook page, and it'll be preserved on YouTube. We want you to share it. Normally, we boost these programs. We don't know if they're doing that or not. Whatever the case may be with this one, we know it's a great episode with a lot of information. We urge you to share it. We urge you to ask questions.
I wanted to go back a little, Keith. I know that you and I were going through law school at about the same time. You're 1 year older than me, but you went to one of the most prestigious law schools in the country, Georgetown Law School. Is that correct?
That is, in fact, I smoked my first joint when I was a freshman at Georgetown Law School. I always like to make that point in public. I know Georgetown's proud of it, just as I am.
Well, and you were working for one of the leading Republican senators, I think.
Senator Everett Dirksen, yeah.
From Illinois, sure. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And
I grew up in Illinois, so I was working for my home state senator when I was first in town. That's right.
And did that have something to do as far as sparking being in politics and seeing what was going on? Why don't you tell the story of how you kind of came up with the idea?
I'm a political junkie, as most people are that live in Washington. Otherwise, there would be no reason to be here. Everybody's a government junkie. But the real impact on my career choice was a result of some work I did with Ralph Nader. The Vietnam War was at its height, and the anti-Vietnam War movement when I graduated Georgetown in 1968. So like many people of my generation, I think including you, Jeffrey, we spent a lot of our time trying to figure out how we could legally stay out of the damn war. We didn't want to be sent home in a body bag. And I had some lawyers from the National Lawyers Guild that were helping draft dodgers, I think they called us at the time. And they offered to hook me up with some psychiatrists in Baltimore who would say that I was gay. And back then it wasn't don't ask, don't tell. If you were gay, they didn't want you in the military. I thought it was a pretty easy way out, and I was all for it. But I was married at the time, and my wife and had a young child, and my wife just was not comfortable with that. The second option they gave me was they would put me in touch with some Canadians, because a lot of American dissidents traditionally have gone to Canada to get away from the government, get away from the draft, whatever. The problem with that was you weren't sure you would ever be allowed back in. And as much as I wanted to avoid the war in Vietnam, I hadn't totally given up on being an American living in the country. At any event, they finally came up with an option that worked. I had been offered a job by a presidential commission when I finished my third year in law school. It was called the National Commission on Product Safety. It was a presidential commission that was largely the result of the work of consumer advocate Ralph Nader. Ralph had come to town after publishing his book, Unsafe at Any Speed, about the Corvair, and he was bringing these young, feisty law graduates in, and they were going to make the world a safer place. So the 2 years I would have been in Vietnam, I spent working around this wonderful consumer advocate, and I had never heard of public interest law, which really all it means is you're using your law degree and your legal skills to try to impact public policy rather than to help a few particular clients get rich or get off some criminal charges. So by the time the commission ended, it was a 2-year commission, I was too old to be drafted. For the first time, I had a choice to do what I wanted to do. And I really felt exhilarated by this concept of public interest law. But by then I'd been smoking weed for 7 or 8 years. And the issue that mattered to me was not product safety, it was legalizing pot. So I pulled some friends together and said, let's start NORML and see if we can get a consumer lobby off the ground. But I never would have been motivated, or even, I don't think I would have thought about doing that, but for the work I had done around Nader.
Now, I know in the beginning, Hugh Hefner from Playboy was one of your first sponsors. Can you tell us how that happened?
Former Attorney General Ramsey Clark, who I'm sorry to say passed away just in the last week, but Ramsey had published a book about the time I was starting NORML called Crime in America. He had been a former Attorney General. His father had been on the Supreme Court. But by this point, he'd become very active in the anti-war movement. And in this book, Crime in America, he called for the legalization of marijuana. So when I was starting NORML, I really wanted Ramsey's blessing. I wanted him to tell me what I was doing made sense, that I wasn't screwing up my whole life. And so I managed to get in to see him, and he was terrific. He did what you would expect. He said, no, absolutely do it. It's important. You know, hundreds of thousands of people are having their lives screwed up unfairly. And he said, do it while you're young, because if you fall on your face, you can pick yourself up. If you think you're going to wait till you do it in midlife, that's not the way things work. But what he also said was, have you been in touch with the Playboy Foundation? And I didn't even know there was a Playboy Foundation. But Ramsey was by that point good friends with Hefner, and he put me in touch with the foundation. And after a few weeks of back and forth, they had me out to Chicago. And Playboy during the 1970s was our strongest financial supporter by a mile. They gave us $100,000 a year in cash. They gave us 2 free full-page ads in the magazine, which back then had a circulation of about 6 million, and each one get passed around to 4 different people. So, and they also covered progressive politics. Anytime we would get someone out of jail, some poor young college kid or whatever that had been locked up, and we'd get some lawyers to fly in and file motions, if we succeeded, Playboy would cover it. So everyone around the country began to hear about and know about NORML primarily through Playboy magazine. But yes, they were our largest supporter all through the 70s.
Did you ever get to go out to the Playboy Mansion in L.A.?
Oh, I did indeed. In fact, I stayed at the mansion both in L.A. and in Chicago. It turns out I developed a close friendship with Hefner's closest assistant during those years, a woman named Bobby Ornstein. And so Bobby would let me know. Hefner was one of these guys who would, he liked, by that point, he'd given up alcohol. He drank Pepsi Cola, but he enjoyed smoking a joint. And so he would sometimes stay up for 24 or 48 hours working without any sleep. And then when it was about time where he wanted to take time off, he'd like to go play pinballs for a few hours. He had a great collection of pinball machines at the Chicago mansion. So Bobby would call me and I'd fly out to Chicago so that when he wanted to take a break, he and Bobby and I'd sit around and play pinballs, smoke weed. And it gave me a chance, obviously, to familiarize Hef with what we were doing. So he was a much stronger supporter because of that private access. By the way, just a little side story. One of Bobby's responsibilities during those years was to make sure that a little box at the headstand of Hefner's personal bed was full of nicely rolled, hand-rolled joints every day. So
pretty amazing. We're learning things that probably have never been discussed
These are important
publicly.
things.
So, wow, what a show. We've got to take a break, Keith. This
Sure.
is such an incredible show. Again, I can't say it enough. If you're watching and you like it, you obviously like it if you're watching, share it. Post it, tell your friends about it. It's going to be up on our Facebook page. It'll be on our YouTube page. It's a great show. You're watching Meldon Law and Friends, recognizing 420 Day, April 20th, 2021. It's episode 26. We'll be right back.
The Gator Nation will be the first to tell you that in all kinds of weather, we all stick together, which is why Meldon Law is honored to be the only official law firm partner of the Florida Gators. We hope you never find yourself the victim of a serious accident, but if you do, our team is here for you. Gators won't back down from a fight, and neither do we. When you're a member of the Gator Nation, you know what it means to never back down. Meldon Law has been a proud supporter of the Gator Nation since 1971. Two forces that won't back down. As the old saying goes, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em.
Hello and welcome back to the fourth and final segment of today's Meldon Law and Friends, a podcast, a weekly podcast brought to you by Meldon Law, a statewide law firm in the state of Florida with its primary office where we've been since 1971, 50 years. We also have offices in South Florida covering the entire Tri-County area, Miami-Dade through Broward through Palm Beach County, and also in Marion County, where we've been for 43 years. Great episode today. If you don't know already, we're celebrating 420 Day. We had a vice president from Columbia Care on earlier, and now we've got Keith Stroup, who's done so many things, worn so many hats. He was the founder of National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws, spoke several times, actually, I've been told, at the University of Florida. I heard him back when I was a sophomore in 1978 at the Plaza of the Americas. And we have a question from Jesse James Messick. He is asking, is it true that the federal government has for decades held a patent on medical marijuana while classifying it as a class 1 narcotic with no medical use? What do you know about that?
Yes, that is accurate. Years ago, they took out a patent, and I forget the particular medical application, but it was a patent on the use of marijuana as a medicine, at the same time that they still today insist that it has no recognized medical use. Now, we know there are tens of millions of patients all over the country, from MS patients to cancer patients to all kinds of things, who find marijuana to be the most effective medicine. And when they take it, a lot of times they need less prescription medication. So it is truly a head in the sand policy for the feds to continue to deny the medical use of marijuana. But frankly, we're almost going past them. We now have 18 states that have legalized it for all adults, regardless of why you smoke. And that's the ultimate answer. We don't need to separate, in my mind, I don't see any need to separate patients from other adults. It's none of the government's business whether we smoke or why we smoke. But yes, to the caller's question, he's absolutely right. That contradiction exists even today.
I have a question for Keith. I understand that yesterday the House passed the Safe Banking Act. What do you know about that?
Well, it's an attempt to allow legitimate businesses. These are manufacturing plants and licensed growers and licensed retailers who have been licensed by the respective states. And again, now we have a total of 18 states that have at least passed the law to establish a legally regulated system. And probably 15 of those are already up and running. But they've had to operate on a cash basis. The banks are afraid to deal with them for fear the feds are going to come in and confiscate the money or charge them with some sort of conspiracy, because marijuana remains illegal and on Schedule 1. What this bill purports to do, and it has a chance, I think, to pass the Senate. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but remember, Republicans traditionally are business friendly, and this is a business bill. It's not the most important bill in Congress. The most important one is called the MORE Act, and what it would do would be take marijuana totally out of the Controlled Substances Act. So it wouldn't be a lower schedule, it would be descheduled. Alcohol's not on that act, tobacco's not in that act, and neither should marijuana be. So we passed the MORE Act in the House last year, but we didn't have enough support, of course, to move it in the Senate. It'll be reintroduced soon, but at least it is interesting to see the first piece of legislation that looks like it may get congressional approval in our area is going to be having to do with allowing the businesses to have banking services so they don't operate as a cash business. You're only inviting corruption and, people failing to pay the right amount of taxes and all kinds of problems when you operate on a cash basis.
Keith, why did they vote on it on 419 rather than 420?
Well, you're right to ask that, because they sometimes do schedule committee hearings and things at our request or other marijuana lobbyists' requests on dates that have some significant cultural meaning. This one, I'm surprised. I would have thought they would have waited one day. Why not?
Well, we have a follow-up question for Mr. Messick. The question is, I understand that 25 states currently allow private growers. Do you think, with Florida having medical marijuana legal, that we may soon see legal growers to cultivate personal use growing?
Yes, it's getting more and more common. The first few states that legalized marijuana, Colorado and Washington in particular, one of them allowed personal cultivation, Colorado, one didn't, Washington, and it was because when they did their surveys for public support, they found they lost about 5 percentage points support when they included personal cultivation, and they weren't winning by large margins, so they were afraid the 5 might cost them the whole initiative. However, over time, the public has learned to accept personal cultivation. I think they see it. We just passed it in Virginia. I live in the state of Virginia, and let me tell you, we're the first state in the South. They voted to totally legalize marijuana for recreational purposes, but the part about the dispensaries won't kick in right now until January 1, 2024. But as of this July 1, I can possess an ounce, I can grow 6 plants in my house for personal use, I can give away an ounce of marijuana to another adult as long as it's for no remuneration. So again, if a state like Virginia has now embraced the idea of personal cultivation, I think most other states are going to follow suit. I don't know the exact number of states right now that have it, but certainly New York, that just legalized marijuana, includes personal cultivation, as does New Jersey, as does New Mexico, and Virginia. So all of the recent ones do.
Keith, I was at the office this morning, and I mentioned that we were going on this show today to celebrate 420, and some of the women in the office said, yes, it's Willie Nelson Day. and so I wanted you to talk a little bit about your friendship with Willie Nelson over the years and how he helped NORML.
Yeah, Willie's been a strong supporter going all the way back to, I think I met him first in '74. It was before Jimmy Carter was elected. I met him a couple of times where I'd go to a concert and afterwards go out and somebody would help me shake his hand on the bus, that kind of thing. But it was then when Jimmy Carter became president that I got to know Willie a lot closer, and it was partly because of the connection with Chip Carter, the president's son, who was a marijuana smoker. And so I ended up developing a lovely relationship with Willie. He served on our advisory board, still serves even today. He's held a benefit golf tournament down at his private golf course for NORML. He's held a benefit concert for NORML. But mostly, I think what he's done is, for a long time, I used to tell Willie, he is America's most beloved marijuana smoker. He was the only guy that was totally in your face about his enjoyment of marijuana, but people loved him regardless of that. Now, what I used to follow up, I tell Willie, yes, he was the most beloved, but he was also the only beloved marijuana smoker. Most other people they were critical of, but they would forgive Willie. That's changed now, of course. But Willie always, he had two issues he cared about: saving family farms and legalizing marijuana. And he always thought that one way to save those farms was to allow family farmers to get licenses to grow marijuana, and that would give them a new crop and a new stream of income. So Willie's been a supporter for all kinds of reasons for a long time.
Can you tell us a story about how you wound up on the roof of the White House with Willie Nelson?
You know,
I haven't heard that one.
Well, I was going to say, I actually get asked that question periodically because someone sometime wrote about Willie smoking a joint on the roof of the White House, and they claimed I was there. I wish I had been, but I honestly wasn't. I think he was with Chip Carter, so he was with the president's son. But it was a beautiful story. Anybody who knows Willie knows that if they're going to allow him to stay in the White House or spend any time in the White House, he's going to smoke a joint. That's just the way it is. And so he did. I forget what the occasion was, but they had asked him to stay over, and he said he'd be delighted. So he ends up on the roof of the White House smoking a big hand-rolled joint.
Okay, we have a question.
Yes, we had a question come in. Tell us about the economic impact. This is from Kerry Meldon. Hello, Kerry. He wants to know, what has been the positive economic impact for states who have legalized recreational marijuana?
Well, first off, they make, some of them, hundreds of millions of dollars a year in tax revenue, so that's obviously one benefit. Some of the newer states, it hasn't built up to hundreds yet, but it's tens of millions, and it will. California, it's several billion. I think it may be $6 billion already in taxes that they raise each year because of legal marijuana. But it's done more than that. It's allowed the law enforcement agencies to focus on more serious crime.
Great point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at one time we were having over 900,000 Americans who were arrested each year on marijuana offenses, and 90% of them were for possession of an ounce or less.
It's crazy. Today,
there's still over 500,000 arrests because we still got half the country that, marijuana is classified as a crime. But 500,000 is a lot better than 900. And secondly, most of those people getting arrested today, quite honestly, are sort of getting a slap on the wrist. Not always. Occasionally somebody gets really screwed around badly. But the attitudes of the American public have totally changed. When we founded NORML, Gallup had just done their first survey asking the American people whether they supported legalizing marijuana. Only 12% supported what we were trying to do. 88% were opposed to it. Today, we have 4 or 5 national surveys, including Gallup, that show between 68 and 70% of the American public support full legalization. That's not just medical use. And it's interesting because only about 14% of the public are current smokers, but yet we have 70% support. So what it shows is we finally won the hearts and minds of a majority of the American public, including the non-smokers.
Okay, Keith, we are at the end of our show. I want to thank you so much for a fabulous interview. I am going to see you in December in Key West at the legal conference for NORML lawyers. And check out NORML.org.
I was about to say, go to the website.
Support NORML. They are a great organization.
Thank you so much for being our guest, Keith. We'll have you back.
I look forward. It was nice seeing you guys. And Jeffrey, I'll look for you in Key West on December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching today. Share and post it. Let people know about this great show. We'll see you next week.